Woke Linux. This is all about how over the last 15 years or so, I can't say exactly how many years, but the woke mind virus has infected the Linux community from top to bottom.
Welcome to Noise Pollution. If you enjoy our channel, hit like and subscribe.
Okay, here's an article from okay, I'll find where it's from. 2018 says Linux community hit by the blight of social justice warfare. A great purge is coming. Now that's been what, 6 years,
Yeah, I think so.
and the purge has happened only not in the way it needed to.
Oh no.
Employee activism is the new unicism. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, I think so.
Whereas trade unions of old fought for tangible bread and butter issues affecting blue collar folk of the early industrial era, today's employee activist is an intellectual predator seeking to maximize the organizational footprint on the backs of other people echoing their political ideas.
Oh, this isn't good.
Okay, I'm not gonna read the whole page. If you really need to, you can pause it and read it. But you get the gist of it. Even back then, it was being noticed how it was eating up the whole industry of open source software. And now, 6 years later, it is beyond repair. And as an indication of that, Red Hat, owned by IBM, is being sued for racial discrimination.
Okay.
Okay, again, I'm not going to get into the article. There's multiple articles on it. So, this is not just a one off that somebody wrote up. You can find it. But
About if we're
this led me up to this video. Now, I had used Linux since 1998 up to maybe somewhere around 10 years ago. And when I came back to it, I've always been a big advocate of Linux and open source. And I try to come back to it with mixed results. On one hand, there were improvements, some better hardware support, better gaming support, clearly, thanks to Valve, and in various other things. But for the most part, it was the same old Linux that I left 10 to 15 years ago. It was the exact, you know, mangled together mess. But now, this time around, it seemed as if the open source software didn't want to work with each other. Like, you have GNOME and KDE, and they had some interlopability before, which seems to be vanishing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going, what's going on with this? I know they've been working on this for all these years. Why? Why is it still kind of a choppy mess? And I think I found why. It's very fragmented, and I do believe it is the woke mind virus. And this confirmed my suspicions. I'd ran across this video, and I have key points here I'm going to look into because it's over an hour long, and I'm not about to go over the entire thing. If for that matter, if that were the case, I would you just go watch his video. I'm covering it because he did say he needs more people to cover it. Here's the problem: you cannot find the sources. You have to be deeply entrenched into the community to get this information because these journalists of today, they're all far alt left, and they don't report on things like this because it's their domain. They're like, we won. This is the way it should be. So they don't report on these things.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying, they're basically so fragmented that the software is taking a dive for it.
Well, a lot of corporations build upon and use open source software, and that's very solid. But as far as desktop Linux goes, I believe it's fragmented the hell and back, and there's no hope for it. I mean, sure, they're going to make small advancements here and there, but I think it's lagging far behind because they have these younger activists working on it instead of full on programmers whose their full interest is in write the code, make it good instead of accept me, accept us, look at us, look at us.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm going to play key points here.
Is real. Also, executives within Red Hat are financially rewarded if they hire fewer white people. That's not a joke. That is a real thing that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to couch this in some sort of, one race versus another thing, because I could care less I could not care less what we're talking about here. The same story could be true whether we're talking about black people, white people, Asian people. I don't care. You don't do this. You don't have policies in your company where you choose a group of people based on ethnicity and say you're rewarded financially with pay and bonuses if you hire less of these people. But that is exactly what Red Hat and IBM are doing.
Now, I can't say this better than he says it. I'll link this in the description and everyone should go watch it. But I'm just trying to be another voice to get the word out. On to the next highlight.
Project. This is part of the code of
This is actually in the code of conduct of the GNOME desktop. And I say GNOME, not GNOME, like some idiot. There's no special mark. GNOME has always been spelled that way. It's always been pronounced that way. Why are we all suddenly going GNOME? Like, what? Maybe it's brain rot. It's brain rot.
conduct from the GNOME project. I'm going to read just a little snippet to you now. Reverseisms, including reverse racism, reverse sexism, and cisphobia, are not against the code of conduct. Okay, what does that mean? Let's break this down a little bit. Now, in order to understand some of these things, you have to know how the people who wrote the code of conduct define these words. So, for example, reverse racism is racism against white people. That's what that means. Reverse sexism is sexism against white people. Cisphobia is basically discrimination or being derogatory against people who are heterosexual, right? Straight people. Very, very simple. According to the GNOME project and the GNOME Foundation, you can be as racist and discriminatory as you want against white people, against men, and against straight people. Fair game. According to the GNOME Foundation, according to the GNOME project, the largest, most used desktop environment in the Linux world, used by...
Yeah. Yeah, it's
insane.
It's nuts. Okay. On to the next point. I'm only going over key points here, which I think stand out more, so I don't end up having a 4-hour long video.
Specifically against having all male speaker panels. So if you have a couple of people on stage, they have a specific policy that if there's a speaker panel, they cannot be all men. They can be all women, but they cannot be all men. End of story.
They're afraid of the testosterone.
Why?
I guess.
I don't know. They just like to add
But wait, what if it was a bunch of trans men? Because, they're real men according to them, right? Would that count then?
I don't know. That's a good
Or if it
question.
was a bunch of trans women, men to women, which, like, how are we counting this again? I mean,
I don't know.
following their own guidelines, this is, it ties your mind up in
Yeah,
knots.
it's very confusing.
Well, it always comes back around to eat itself.
Yeah.
Once the insanity reaches a certain point, they eat their own.
Yeah, well, we just need to stay out of the way while they do it.
Additional layers of random discrimination.
Well, that's the problem. That's why I'm covering this. Is it's hard to stay out of their way when they're eating everything.
Yeah.
Everything you ever cared about. I've always been passionate about open source and Linux and some other things, like, of course, from my childhood, games and comics, and it's eating up everything. It's working its way into everything.
Yeah, that is
And
true.
okay, whether I like the whole LGBTQ scene or not, like it, don't like it, whatever, tough luck, right? But here's where the problem comes in. They hate me. I am the epitome of everything that they hate.
Yeah.
So I can be like, hey, I might not like you, but we can live in this world together. We can coexist. They are not offering that same thing back.
Because discrimination is fun. They also have exclusionary discriminatory policies, such as, for example, they provide scholarships and grants to pay for people to travel to their events, right? But again, those are open only to people who are not white straight men. Quote, we emphasize funding applicants from historically underrepresented and untapped groups. What they say, because when you drill down into it, they have literally checkboxes
Okay.
that you
On to the next point.
annual report from the Linux Foundation has one.
Now this one is not so much about the LGBTQ. This is more about, I would say, in my own opinion, Microsoft. Microsoft is bought in big into the Linux Foundation. And it would seem they're eclipsing Linux out of it. I'll let him explain some of it.
Dedicated to Linux. It is a 141 page report from the Linux Foundation and it has 1 page dedicated to Linux. It has 9 pages dedicated to diversity.
Okay, so it is about that community too, because as he said, 9 pages devoted to diversity.
How can a foundation just have 1 page and the rest of it be about inclusion or
It's like,
diversity or
we're
whatever?
the Cancer Foundation. We put 1% of our resources toward cancer, 1 page in our annual report. It's like, I don't think I'm going to be donating money to you.
No, I mean, why would
And
you?
if you represent the hospital that I need to go to, I'm not going to that hospital.
Yeah.
That is 9 times. That is 900% more diversity than Linux. And what do they mean by diversity? They mean exclusion. They mean discrimination, just like what we pointed out right here. Read it all for yourself. It's all there. There was one other thing though in that last slide. We kind of jumped past that middle bullet point here. The Linux Foundation, developers banned from events for wearing clothing endorsing Republicans outside of the event. Well, that's crazy.
Okay, my next point is directly connected to what he just said. Oh, come on. Yeah, YouTube's gonna crap up on me now.
What it looks like.
Yeah, hit reload and
Read
act
it
like
all
it's
for
gonna
yourself.
play.
It's
I'm getting to it.
posted a picture on Twitter where he put on a red Make America Great Again hat, right? That's it.
Hey, I'm not crazy about that whole scene either. I mean, if you're a Trump supporter, good for you. But I do find most people, they go to that length, they're just trying to make an ass of themselves. Not in all cases, but in some, right?
Yeah.
Some.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say I don't like it. I don't like that hat. I take great offense to it. That's a difference of opinion. You don't have no right to kick them out of something. That it's not like they picked a fight with you.
They got kicked out?
Of the Linux Foundation convention.
That's all he did. This was not at a
Oh,
Linux
yeah.
Foundation event.
He didn't wear the hat to the convention. They
What?
went into his social media, found a picture of him wearing that, and threw him out for it.
Oh my God.
This did not tag anything related to technology or Linux even remotely. Nothing related whatsoever. But one individual found it, noted that, oh, this guy was going to be attending, just attending a Linux Foundation upcoming event, and she began to complain. She said, oh, Linux Foundation, you must stop this evil man with this red hat from going to a Linux Foundation event. The Linux Foundation agreed. Hi, all. This is the.
Yeah, it's that bad and worse.
Okay, that person got kicked out for wearing a Make America
No,
Great Again.
For at one point in his life for having worn that hat.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. He didn't wear it to the convention. He wore it at some event,
Okay,
and they found it on his social media
for
and
anybody
kicked him out.
by whatever long shot watches this video and you're like, you're this far left, can you seriously step back and think they kicked him out for a hat he wore once upon a time? Can you seriously agree with that?
Okay, well,
I mean, he wasn't, marching in old Germany, military, right?
yeah.
He wore a hat.
Well, the thing is the 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 multitudes of people that are constantly on their social media doing trans makeup and drag shows, and they're not gonna kick. No, that's not fair. He just wore a
Okay,
hat.
I'm gonna continue this. I got several more points to cover,
Are politically
or rather, let him cover.
separate. Does that make me a moron of the first order? According to Linus, I believe it does. I believe it does. And the problem here is this. If this was just simply Linus spouting off, no big deal. You know what? Everyone has a moment where they have some feelings. However,
I don't think this was the right section. Looking at my notes here, so I'm just gonna skip ahead. But the part I was looking for is basically one of these distros said, we don't like the way that Twitter's doing, so we're taking our stuff off of Twitter, because they had like an interview with a right-wing politician on Twitter.
Oh, okay. Well, seems to me that they're just fighting off their own feet, and they're gonna get circled into themselves and not be put anywhere.
I mean, they are somewhere in these that I'm getting to. They are actively telling people, don't use our distro, our flavor of this operating system. If you are not left wing, we don't want you. Get out.
Odd.
I mean, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. They're putting a gun in the mouth.
Yeah.
few more examples because it's interesting. Here is the founder of Linux Mint, right? This is Clem.
I've used Linux Mint quite a bit.
Clem.
I never knew
Clem
this was
Lefebvre,
behind
I
it.
believe is how you pronounce his name. And he gets into one of the past conflicts with Israel and Palestine, and he says,
But I will say I am conflicted as hell now, because I love Linux and open source, and I dislike Microsoft and Apple. And here I am going, oh, I have nowhere to turn now. I'm gonna start, drawing in the sand and beating rocks together instead of using computers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stand on a soapbox with a megaphone,
Yep.
until somebody's like, we make those soapboxes and you have to embrace this community.
Yep.
I mean, where does it stop?
Not going to unless somebody stops it.
Talk about thought police. Talk about, what is it, 1984.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Are they blind to this? I mean, these fuckers would make Hitler proud. They would, you know, he would gush with pride over this. This thought police, this controlling and policing of people.
You know, I don't think they're blind to it. I think they know exactly what they're doing.
Quote, I'm only going to ask for one thing here. If you do not agree with his stance, I kindly ask you to not use Linux Mint and not to donate money to it. I promise not to talk about this anymore. I don't want any money or help coming from Israel or people who support the actions of their government. We'll put aside the whole clearly Clem just doesn't like Jews thing for a minute. We're just going to put all that aside based on this and other statements made.
Yeah, you heard that part. The man that is very clear he doesn't like Jews.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. Plus, he's putting out this mentality, which, like I said, would make Hitler proud.
Yeah.
And this is in America. This is becoming America. It's not just America. Look at Canada.
Yeah, from what I hear, Canada's a lot
And
worse.
what is some other places, Switzerland, I'm not even sure. But, ooh, I'm about to have to learn some Spanish and run for the border.
Ain't that the truth?
Because this is, it's everywhere.
Yep.
That aside. Again, taking a political stance, declaring that he does not want people to be using the project, donating to the project, contributing to the project if they don't agree with his political stance. That's kind of a common thread. A common thing keeps coming up over and over again among these technical projects, whether we're talking about the Linux Foundation or GNOME or any of these other things. If you do not agree with the politics, you are
Okay, you get the gist of that. And okay, this person isn't just saying things. You could say he has the receipts. That's another thing they like to say now. He has the receipts to back it up.
Oh,
He's
okay.
got the screenshots, the Twitter feeds, the forum feeds. He's showing what these CEOs and developers, what they are actually saying. This is not make believe. This is not hyperbole. This is what's actually happening. And I don't think anybody's really wise to it for the few that might care. I don't think anybody's really wise to it. And I doubt they're like, well, I use Windows or whatever, right? I doubt it's much different. It's just, they keep things more internal. They're more about making the money. But yeah, let some of those devs start talking.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, if Linux is this bad, just imagine how bad Windows is. Microsoft, I mean.
And Apple,
Oh, yeah,
Apple's got to
Apple.
be so much worse. I mean, Apple's pretentious right from the get go.
True.
behind Hyperland. The window manager Hyperland that sits on top of Wayland was banned from the free desktop project recently. And he was banned because somebody, not him, in the Hyperland not free desktop chat server made a joke involving pronouns. All right, now follow me here. So the free desktop project then
I guess
banned
comedy's
the
dead.
developer of Hyperland.
Yeah, comedy's
who
dead too.
Was an active contributor because of that. And the person who did the banning had the following to say. If you really says LGB instead of LGBTQ, I'm going to straight up bully you. Also, that same person, quote, reboosted over on Mastodon, quote, right-wing people are not welcomed in your organization. That is effing based.
Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip ahead. Yeah. And okay, I'm on YouTube frequently. It doesn't freeze up on me like this. This is
Yeah, I got some thoughts on that myself.
and I have a quite a hefty computer. It's decent. It's got plenty enough power. But I'll get to it.
GB instead of LGBTQ. Here's again from Daniel Foray, the leader and founder of the Elementary Project, also a person who has developed a great many of very high quality icon sets and user interface designs across the Linux world. Daniel, this dude did a pretty good job on all that stuff. He says, quote, I guess it's my turn to echo what other trans people in the Linux space have been saying. If all you care about is the software, you still need to care about trans people. An attack on trans rights is an attack on desktop Linux. Several of the major things you probably care about and use every day are made or maintained by trans people. Even if you only care about the
Okay, here's the thing. They consider if you sneezed and they seen it, they would say that's transphobic and attacking them. Everything, anything is an attack to them. And they're like, it's not just an attack on us, it's an attack on free software, blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
software, you still need to care about what happens to the people who make it. We
Okay, interrupt them again, but kind of like they're going, climate change is racist. Math is racist, and this is not hyperbole. You can look this up, look up those keywords. Yes, they are really saying it. So basically, if you have a hard time with math, you're racist for trying to teach math like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like they made the test that women have to go through in the military easier so it wouldn't be sexist.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Doesn't that just make us have a weaker military?
Yes, it does.
I mean, aren't they supposed to be the best of the best?
They're supposed to be.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Knowing's half the battle. That's just kind of like with Decepticons, right?
Yeah.
You know, the transsexuals, knowing's half the battle.
Yeah.
need you to show up. Okay. All right.
Need you to show
Daniel
up.
then goes on to
Wait.
talk about
I'll show up. What's next? I'm here. Now what?
Yeah, I know.
No homo.
me a little bit with the post entitled "Assault, Death, Transphobia, Etc." Whoa, that's a cool one. He says, quote, I'm going to be very beeping explicit here in case you still don't get it. If you repost or platform or collaborate with people like Brian Lunduke or Tom Morosky, aka Switch to Linux, and I end up on the news, you are partially to blame. It is your fault.
I guess
for
I'm
helping
partially to
normalize
blame.
people that are promoting
For
hateful
what?
attitudes against trans people and me specifically.
I have deeply
You are part
offended
of
the
spread
trans
of the
people.
violence that I experience. You are
They
not
can get
neutral.
over
Now,
it.
I'm not 100%
And they don't want me playing
sure
with their toys no
if
more.
Daniel is
No, they're
saying
desktop toys.
if
Like,
I,
Oh,
he says,
Lord.
if I end up on the news, I don't know if he says, this is listed assault and death. Is he saying he's going to attack and murder me? Or is he saying that I'm going to
this
hire
person
someone
said,
to murder him? I can't tell what Daniel's saying.
yeah, this person actually said, if I end up on the news because of you, which is either, what? You could read into that either way.
Yeah, I mean, that's not saying really anything here nor there.
That sounds like a threat. Right off to me, it sounds like a threat.
Yeah.
But they could have meant it of they're gonna get killed, and it's like, okay, these Linux users are gonna kill them. How many Linux users have you seen? Most of them are too tied up in the operating system, the software, and they've got their head full of that kind of thing. They're not out to murder anyone except for that person who developed I think it was the Riser file system. He actually did murder his wife.
Oh.
But yeah, that's one incident out of millions.
There. It sounds kind of threatening and crazy, but that's just what it is. But the key part and why I read
Also, his wife was not a transsexual.
this here, he says, quote, if you repost, platform, or collaborate with people like, what does that mean? And this is a common refrain you see from people who are on the pro-trans side of things and more leftist side of things politically, is that you should not allow people to speak. You should not work with people. You should not allow people into your organization at all if they don't agree with you on all things, trans issues.
Yeah, you hear all that.
Yeah, I hear it, and it's very bad. Me anyway. I mean, I don't really understand software or anything,
You
but
don't have to understand
itself,
software
it's just
for
really
this.
bad. I mean,
I mean,
even I
you
know that.
you could take this and you could apply it to anything,
Well,
anything.
yeah, that's
It means the exact same thing then.
yeah, I know. That's what I was gonna say. It sounds really bad. I mean, really, really bad.
There's yet another big company.
OpenSUSE for a second here, because this is, to me, is one of the most fascinating examples. In part, I used to work at SUSE. I was an elected member of the OpenSUSE board for some years. I know these people, and I know the project, and I know the company extremely well. I know how it works inside and out, and they hate that. However, recently, the OpenSUSE team received a complaint. It was a very well-worded, very simple complaint that was asking if maybe we could be, I'm paraphrasing, a little more neutral in our project branding. Because what the project was doing at that point was replacing, in certain forums and whatnot, the logo of OpenSUSE.
Okay, I'm gonna cut this short. He's basically saying they were replacing their mascot and logos with LGBT mascots and logos. And when someone says, shouldn't we make it neutral so it could be for everyone? There was a big uprising, a bunch of fits thrown over it.
Well, making it a neutral mascot, that should be better for everybody.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna start using operating system, and if I see rainbow flags everywhere, I'm gonna be like, whoa, maybe this wasn't for me. Maybe this, clearly they're targeting a certain kind of person, and it wouldn't be for me.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a neutral logo and everything, that includes everybody. Or it should.
I'm getting to the next part. Just bear with me here.
Okay.
Oh, I'm kind of talking to. I'm not talking to you.
See his head right there over the top of the blue hair there. That's a guy named Scott Hanselman. He's vice president at Microsoft. He oversees some of the open source side of things. He's very heavy into open source at Microsoft, and he's been speaking at conferences for quite a few years now. He has a podcast and whatnot where he talks about diversity and inclusion and all these sorts of things. But here's the thing. His version of diversity, and
Right.
apparently Microsoft.
So I was saying, you might go, well, I use Windows. This person works for Microsoft.
Microsoft's version of diversity, because they support this. He speaks on their behalf. They know.
And he is actually calling for violence against white men, straight men, something like that. White, straight, and man.
He's doing this, and they don't stop him. He goes out there and he literally tells people that people need to be willing, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but you can look it up because I've reported on this before, willing to commit crimes and willing to go to jail in the name of attacking white men. This is things he's talked about
Are you
repeatedly
hearing
because
this?
that's diversity. The slide even says to create an inclusive environment, we need accomplices more than allies. Now, what does accomplice means? Accomplice means that you are a partner in a criminal activity, right? That's what that means. And he repeated this over and over again that people need to be willing to go to jail. What are you going to do to white men? Okay, so you go. What Microsoft and the open source side thing at Microsoft, what they're advocating for is you find white men and you commit a crime against them, one that's so bad that you would have to go to jail or prison. What exactly is being advocated? Are you advocating for murdering them? It sounds kind of like it. Are you advocating for robbery, muggings? What is going on here? And this is all to push out. The whole idea is push out people who are the wrong ethnicity, the wrong gender, the wrong political
Go out
ideology,
there and hurt
or
some
don't have
white
the
men.
right ideas
Oh,
relating to
don't
maybe
do
something
her
like
that
trans,
way.
right? And this is not an accident. I want to be very clear about this. None of this is just accidentally happening. This is all very, very purposeful. How do we know this? Well, we look at the individuals who run the projects.
Okay, that was from Microsoft, and a person that works for Microsoft was advocating to go out and commit crimes, punishable by prison crimes against men, and I'm sure particularly straight white men.
From a recent post from the Gnome Foundation by this is the entire elected and executive director board of the Gnome Foundation, and they're talking about what they're doing. Well, they're having a great progressive conversation focusing on sustainability, diversity, and inclusion. Now, most of the time, when we're talking in the Linux and open source space, certainly beyond that for sure, but I'm talking about Linux and open source specifically. When diversity and inclusion are brought up, what they mean is discrimination and exclusion, right?
I entirely agree with that. When they say diversity and inclusion, they're talking about exclusivity. It's the opposite because by the very definition, well, I don't know, not by the very definition, but by their definition, when you say inclusivity and you're going, but only for these people,
Yeah.
that's exclusivity.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go on to the final point that I was gonna showcase here. Yeah, well, I'm trying to.
Focusing on sustainability.
And this is a big one if you think about it.
Right? I mean, but whether you're, Christian or Jewish or whatever, I think you're going to be discriminating against people who are religious
If you're religious, okay, right off, you're not supposed to discriminate against any such religion, just like you're not supposed to discriminate against, their sexual orientation and so on. Well, if they are inclusive, why is that by default uh divisive and exclusive of religion? Because if you are a Christian, right,
Yeah.
it will by default be the opposite of much of that. Okay, let's say you're a Christian who believes in that but still says, but we can still coexist, because that's what a good Christian would likely do.
Yeah.
But they still will not include you. So yeah, this is anti-religious, which most of the world are religious, but they don't. If you by their own definition, they don't want you in their group. It's almost as if they say, it's almost as if they're saying they're an atheist group and you have to be one to be in the group. They don't say that, but if you follow a religion, it will generally greatly conflict with much of what they believe and follow.
Yeah.
So by default, it makes it anti-religious.
Going to be enforcing these ideas on them. But that is where we're at. So this is huge amounts of discrimination, huge amount. I mean,
I think the number one issue, okay, a lot of their existence and what they do is ugly, but the number one issue is that they're saying it doesn't matter if you accept us, we don't accept you, and we won't have you in our group. And then their group becomes everything, becomes the core of everything. You know, they're kind of like saying, you go over there and we'll be over here.
Yeah.
Oh, but then it goes further. They're actively calling for violence on anyone that's not like them.
Yeah.
This goes so far beyond software. I just hate to see it infest another one of my favorite things.
massive levels of discrimination and exclusion that's happening right now. And it's mean-spirited. It's not nice. It's not being done to help anybody. There's no inclusion and happiness going on. It is a redefinition of words and just cruelty, which means there's just more fighting afoot. Because you've got a large group of people who have control and they're going to be fighting against people to force them out because they don't have the right ideas, right? Like, so me, I have the wrong ideas, right? You don't have to agree.
Okay, I'm gonna close this video, but I just had to get this out there. I had to say my 2 cents on it. And I encourage for everyone to spread the word, the knowledge on what's happening with this in general and this in software. Okay, that's all for now.
Thank you everybody for watching, and if you like our videos, hit like and subscribe. We are on YouTube and Rumble, and we'll see you on the next one.